I guess we have to start with Trump because it's the biggest news of the week. Do we start with we'll start with the New York what did he get? The New York not contempt. What was he
Yeah,
fined?
yeah, that's what it was. The judge
Fine for the
issued more
gag.
contempt fines and more threats.
So he issued the first fine, $5,000. I forget what the statement was for that.
Solely because his campaign still had a prior statement on it that was not even issued after his gag order.
That they didn't delete after they deleted it from the truth, but not for, it was reposted somewhere else. They didn't delete it. It's $5,000, just like that. Poof. $10,000 because it's got to go in escalating gradation of sanctions because he allegedly made a statement to an AP reporter or somewhere out in the hallway about what do you say? The person sitting next to the judge is very biased. The person sitting next to the judge is very biased, and the judge thinks that he was talking about the clerk, and he said, "You can't talk about my clerk anymore because the world cannot know that she's Chuck Schumer's girlfriend." Hashtag joking, but that she was posting pics with Chuck Schumer, and then brings him in. Robert, I've been following the tweets. I've been following Gavea. We talked about it on Friday. Like, from what I understand, the judge asked Trump to testify or compelled him to testify to explain himself. Explain how that's, for people who don't understand how that's even possible. How does the judge compel him to testify in a civil proceeding about contempt?
As different forms of contempt. Yeah, is in essence what is you see what some of us have known for a while, which is that the most often state official to abuse their power is not in the executive branch, it's not in the legislative branch, it's in the judicial branch. It's what Hamilton and Madison got wrong during the Federalist anti-Federalist debate. The anti-Federalists said you can't trust this kind of limited class of people with this amount of power that you're calling a judiciary. They will inevitably and inescapably abuse that power. And because at heart there was a strong elitist streak in a lot of the so-called founders, the real founders are the people who staffed the fields and staffed the economic engine and staffed the sanctions and the political protests and the ballot boxes, not just a few folks in powdered wigs sitting around a hall. But for those that still fancy that the only founding fathers can be a bunch of elite guys, not the people who actually made the revolution possible. They got a lot of stuff wrong. And one of the things they got wrong was they trusted more their fellow elite class than they trusted the people who actually made the revolution successful. And one example of this was this way too much confidence that the Federalists had in the judicial branch. The Anti-Federalists accurately forecast this branch will abuse the power the most. And one of the excuses that Hamilton and Madison and others used was, don't worry, the judicial branch doesn't have enforcement power. Don't worry, the judicial branch doesn't have the power of the purse or the power of the sword. Yes, they do. They just took it for themselves. What were you going to do to stop them from doing it? Now they seize people's bank accounts. Now they seize people's property. Now they have marshals and bailiffs at their disposal. They now have the power of the sword. They now have the power of the purse. So, and what's going to stop them when they declare that they unilaterally get to decide what's legal and constitutional about themselves? This judge is the personification of the problems with giving the judicial branch power to begin with in any great consequence. Now, to his credit, Madison was for jury trials. He was for restricting judicial power with the Bill of Rights later on and so forth. But this was inherent to putting any elite body and saying, we're going to let you determine what the law is. We're going to let you determine what the Constitution says. And we're going to give you the tools and the tickets to seize power of the purse and of property and of the sword, which is what they've done. This judge is just abusing all his power. He is a state actor like everyone else. He can't restrain. Could a congressman come up and say, I hereby ban you from talking about my staff? That would be struck down as unconstitutional by these same courts tomorrow. Could the president come out and say, you can't talk about my staff? No, he'd be struck down as unconstitutional tomorrow. And yet a judge is doing it, and there's no consequence. There's no cry out from this courts of appeals in New York or from the federal courts in New York. This is a judge constantly, consistently violating the federally constitutionally protected civil rights of President Trump in order to injudiciously interfere with an election and obstruct an honest and transparent election. This is a corrupt judge who, if we had an honest legal system, he would be the one behind bars, not President Trump. He does not have the power to order Trump to testify. He does not have the constitutional power to order any fines against Trump. He didn't have the constitutional power to do the gag order. There's no constitutional basis for a gag order. His staff is free reign. They are public officials. You corrupt hack of a judge don't get to hide their corruption from the world. This is an ongoing disgrace that is a damnation of our judicial system, and so many lawyers are not saying boo about it.
I'll bring it up. I know I've played it before. I'll just play this one part again because it's beautiful to listen to.
I had one last thing to say about tools. I get a lot of what I do involves motions. These summary judgment motions I mentioned. And all right, am I following the law or am I making law? Okay, I'm following law. I'm an impartial referee, but it's hard to factor out my own emotions. And I have tools. Somebody can say,
that's it. It's hard for me to factor out my own emotions, and I have tools. Now, Robert, he compels Trump to testify, say, what was the meaning of that? You violated the court order talking about a member of my staff when you said someone next to me is extremely biased. Trump says, I'm talking about Michael Cohen, who was on the stand today, embarrassing himself and basically undoing the prosecution's case. And Engoron says, I don't believe you, $10,000. Now, he talked about the tools that he has, summary judgments, which he issued in this case. And there was a part of his speech where he says, what I'm going to say now is very controversial. Juries get it wrong a lot, and I can bypass a jury with a judgment notwithstanding a verdict. I was listening to mainstream media report on the Trump New York case, and they're saying, well, Trump's already been found guilty of fraud. Now they're just determining, the amount, the level of guilt. And I'm like, they've successfully Alex Jones them. I said they were going to do it. Now the media narrative is he's already guilty because this judge said summary judgment guilty on one count of the fraud. Now I've sanctioned him $5,000, $10,000, which they're going to appeal. And the next sanction's got to be even more. Where does it end, and what can be done?
I mean, the question is, how embarrassing does it have to get for our courts to finally step in? Are they just going to end even the appearance and the image of constitutional democracy? Does it have to completely collapse? Do they have to have 75 million people in the streets before they go, oh, golly gee, maybe I should have done something instead of gone to my third cocktail party in the summer in the Hamptons, Justice Roberts? I mean, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. But the judiciary is so part of a professional class that is so prejudiced, so bigoted, and so embubbled that they don't understand this. They do not understand that the world looks at this as a joke. The world looks at this as an embarrassment, that you have this lunatic old man presiding over President Trump in a trial he has no legal power to even preside over, on a case that is entirely frivolous and would have been thrown out in any other context, in any other circumstance, prohibiting Trump from speaking about the corruption of his own judicial staff, and now ordering summary fines against him and compelling him to speak, and then summarizing and then doing more summary fines against him because he loves the power. I mean, that's what that little presentation, why the Holocaust Center is inviting a whack job judge is beyond me. It shows how many Holocaust centers have become a complete crock. The ADL has become a complete crock. They become an embarrassment to themselves. They do more damage to the issues related to the Holocaust than all the Holocaust deniers in the world combined. Nobody has done more damage to the Holocaust issues than the Anti-Defamation League. Nobody has defamed more the cause of issues related to anti-Semitism than the Anti-Defamation League.
Robert, it's totally off topic, and it'll be just a small parenthesis. They apparently removed Chaya Raichik, Libs of TikTok, from their glossary of extremists. The ADL did. I don't know if you heard that.
Well, their members and board subscribers are realizing that while they've been in bed with these radical lefty nut jobs, that all of a sudden they wake up and realize the person they're in bed with is a Hamas champion. And they're like, oops, maybe we made a little mistake. A little late now, ain't it? And that's the problem, is how late are the courts going to be to salvage the reputation and credibility of the courts themselves? This problem has always existed. It's just usually they targeted politically marginal players. Now, it happened at the beginning of the country. With the founding of the country, you had judges weaponizing their power, going after their political opponents. It took the United States Senate impeaching the chief Supreme Court judge at the time to get them to back down and realize, oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't just abuse our power so rampantly in front of everybody. That would be Supreme Court Justice Samuel Chase, who back then presided over trials, who was politically weaponizing the trial process, by the way, in New York, to go after his political opponents, just like this case. We're back here all over again. And the question is, will the judiciary step in, or will they be asleep at the wheel until the whole system crumbles? Will the Senate, credit to Senator J.D. Vance. Senator Vance said the D.C. judge should be impeached, that these gag orders are patently interference in an election, completely in excess of her power, and a violation of her oath of office, and she should be impeached. There needs to be more calls for that. Our new Speaker of the House that showed some promise, first thing he was doing was going up to kiss up to Sean Hannity and the deep state crowd, saying, don't worry, I didn't mean anything I said in opposed to funding to Ukraine. Rather than showing what a weak person he is as the new Speaker of the House, maybe he should take on these problems that are so dangerous that no one will believe in the credibility or integrity of the judicial branch or our constitutional government if this continues unabated. Because this is just, everybody's abusing their power. Every judge can't wait to abuse their power. Well, and they're abusing it in ways that the Supreme Court itself has said, you don't have this power of contempt to do what this judge is doing. You don't have this power of gag orders or prior restraint to do what these judges are doing. You don't have this power to misuse bail in this way. You don't have the power to misuse criminal cases in this way. And yet they're not, you don't have power to do selective prosecution in civil cases in this way. And yet they're allowing all of it to happen, and they're not intervening. And they better intervene, or the whole system's going to crumble right in front of us.